Marcus Daniels was the kind of man people respected. In his mid-30s, he had built a steady career as a sales manager at Pinnacle Real Estate, one of the top firms in the state. His charm, work ethic, and ability to close deals made him a rising star in the company. At home, Marcus had what everyone thought was the perfect life: a beautiful wife, Jasmine, and a cozy, modern home in a quiet neighborhood. Together, they were the picture of success. Jasmine was Marcus's anchor. With her warm smile, caramel-toned skin, and naturally curly hair that she often styled in elegant updos, she was the kind of woman who turned heads. But she wasn't just beautiful. She was smart and ambitious in her own right. She had left her career in marketing to focus on building a family with Marcus, a decision they both agreed on at the time. Despite their busy lives, Jasmine always made their house feel like a home, from the scented candles burning in every room to the carefully prepared dinners waiting when Marcus returned late from work. For Marcus, Jasmine was everything. He prided himself on being a good husband, working hard to provide for her and their future. But lately, he'd been spending more time at the office hoping to impress his boss, Nathan Cross, and secure a promotion. Nathan, the charismatic CEO of Pinnacle Real Estate, was the epitome of success: tall, confident, and always dressed in expensive suits that looked like they were made just for him. Nathan had a way of commanding attention when he walked into a room, and Marcus admired him for it. Nathan seemed to see potential in Marcus, often mentoring him and promising big opportunities in the future. "Marcus, you're one of the best I've got," Nathan told him one evening as they wrapped up a late meeting. "Keep pushing, and you'll be running this place one day." Those words stayed with Marcus. He wanted to be someone Jasmine could be proud of, someone who could give her everything she deserved. But his ambition came at a cost. Late nights at the office and weekend work events left Jasmine alone more often than she liked, and Marcus had started noticing her subtle hints of frustration. "I hardly see you anymore," she said one night as they sat on the couch, the TV playing in the background. "We're supposed to be building a life together, but it feels like your job comes first." Marcus sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know, babe, but this is for us. Once I get that promotion, things will settle down. I promise." Jasmine gave him a small smile, but the tension in her eyes didn't disappear. "I hope so," she said quietly, turning back to the TV. Unbeknownst to Marcus, that tension had been building for months. Jasmine felt neglected, like she was living in Marcus's shadow. She loved him, but she couldn't ignore the loneliness that crept in during his long absences. It was during one of those lonely evenings that Nathan first reached out. Nathan had always been charming, but his attention toward Jasmine felt different. It started innocently enough: compliments at company events, casual conversations about life and relationships. But over time, his interest became more personal. He'd text her occasionally, asking how she was doing or commenting on how stunning she looked at Marcus's work events. Jasmine tried to brush it off as harmless, but deep down, she knew it was crossing a line. One evening, after Marcus had canceled yet another date night to work late, Jasmine found herself responding to one of Nathan's texts. It was innocent at first, a simple, "Thanks, I appreciate it." But the conversation didn't stop there. Nathan had a way of making her feel seen, valued, and appreciated in a way Marcus hadn't lately. Before long, their messages became more frequent, more intimate. Jasmine told herself it was just a harmless distraction, something to fill the void while Marcus was busy with work. But Nathan had other intentions. He knew how to manipulate situations to get what he wanted, and Jasmine was no exception. He began inviting her to friendly dinners, saying he wanted to discuss ways to help Marcus advance in the company. Jasmine hesitated at first, but the temptation of Nathan's attention and charm proved too strong. Meanwhile, Marcus remained oblivious. He trusted Jasmine completely and never doubted her loyalty. At work, Nathan continued to mentor Marcus, praising his hard work and encouraging him to keep pushing for success. Marcus admired Nathan and often mentioned him to Jasmine, unaware of the secret connection growing between them. "You'd like Nathan," Marcus told her one night as they prepared for bed. "He's smart, driven, and really believes in me. I think this promotion is in the bag." Jasmine forced a smile, her stomach twisting with guilt. "I'm glad he sees your potential," she said softly, avoiding his gaze. For Marcus, life seemed to be going perfectly. He was climbing the corporate ladder, had a supportive wife, and was on the cusp of achieving everything he'd ever wanted. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form. Jasmine's feelings of neglect and guilt were growing stronger, and Nathan's manipulation was tightening its grip. The perfect life Marcus had worked so hard to build was about to come crashing down, and he had no idea. Marcus was a man of routine. Every weekday he left for work at 7 a.m. sharp, his tie perfectly knotted, and his leather briefcase in hand. His dedication to his job was unmatched, but as the days went by, Marcus couldn't help but notice a shift in Jasmine's demeanor. She wasn't the same warm, cheerful woman who kissed him goodbye at the door each morning. Instead, she seemed distracted, her laughter quieter, her smiles less frequent. "Everything okay, babe?" Marcus asked one evening as they sat at the dinner table. Jasmine poked at her food, her mind clearly elsewhere. "Huh? Oh, yeah. Just a little tired," she replied, avoiding his eyes. Marcus didn't push. He figured she might be stressed or feeling a little down. After all, he had been working longer hours lately, leaving her alone more often. He promised himself he'd make it up to her soon, a weekend getaway maybe, or a date night at her favorite restaurant. At work, Marcus's admiration for Nathan continued to grow. Nathan was the kind of leader everyone aspired to be, confident, charismatic, and always in control. He had a knack for inspiring people, but he also had a way of keeping his distance, never revealing too much about himself. Marcus respected him, even envied him at times, but he never imagined Nathan could have ulterior motives. It was during a routine office meeting that Marcus first overheard something odd. Nathan was speaking with another executive, their voices hushed but audible enough for Marcus to catch snippets of their conversation. "She's incredible," Nathan said, his tone light but laced with something more. "I can't get enough of her." The executive laughed. "You've always had a thing for beautiful women. Just make sure you don't get caught." Nathan smirked, his voice dropping to a whisper as the two men walked away. Marcus frowned but quickly shook off the thought. Nathan was a married man, and Marcus assumed the conversation was about some harmless flirtation, or so he told himself. The first real crack appeared a few nights later. Jasmine had planned a dinner date for them at one of their favorite Italian restaurants. Marcus was looking forward to spending time with her, but an hour before they were supposed to leave, Jasmine called him into the living room. "Something came up," she said, her voice hesitant. "Tamika wants me to go with her to some art show tonight. She's been having a rough week, and I don't want to let her down." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Can't it wait?" "We haven't had a night out in weeks." "I know, and I'm sorry," Jasmine said, her tone soft. "We'll reschedule, I promise." He sighed but nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. "Okay. Have fun." Jasmine left shortly after, dressed in a sleek black dress that hugged her curves perfectly. Marcus couldn't help but admire her as she walked out the door. But something about her excuse didn't sit right with him. Tamika wasn't the type to lean on others for emotional support, and Jasmine's sudden concern felt out of character. Later that evening, Marcus decided to go for a drive to clear his head. As he passed an upscale restaurant downtown, something caught his eye. Jasmine's car, parked near the entrance. He slowed down, his pulse quickening as he scanned the parking lot. Through the restaurant's large glass windows, he spotted her. Jasmine was sitting at a corner table, her back to the window. Opposite her sat a man who was laughing and leaning in close. Marcus couldn't see his face clearly, but the man's tailored suit and confident posture looked eerily familiar. His stomach churned. For a moment, he considered going inside, confronting Jasmine and the man she was with. But he stopped himself. He didn't want to jump to conclusions. Not yet. Instead, he drove home, his mind racing with questions. Who was the man? Why hadn't Jasmine told him the truth about her plans? And why did this feel like something more than a casual dinner? The following days were a blur of confusion and doubt. Jasmine continued to act distant, spending more time on her phone and less time engaging with Marcus. One evening, as they sat on the couch, Marcus noticed her texting someone with a small smile on her face. "Who's that?" he asked casually. Jasmine quickly locked her phone and set it aside. "Just Tamika," she said, her tone too quick, too rehearsed. Marcus nodded but didn't press further. The seed of doubt had already been planted, and it was growing fast. At work, Nathan's behavior seemed unchanged. He continued to mentor Marcus, offering advice and encouragement. But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He started noticing the subtle way Nathan's eyes lingered on Jasmine during company events, the way he always seemed to find a reason to talk to her. Marcus told himself he was being paranoid, but the unease in his gut refused to go away. Then came the moment that changed everything. One evening, Jasmine was in the shower and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Marcus glanced at it out of habit but froze when he saw the message preview. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. Nathan." The air left Marcus's lungs as he stared at the screen, his mind struggling to process what he'd just seen. His boss, his mentor, was texting his wife. And not just any message, but one that confirmed something intimate had happened between them. Jasmine's voice called out from the bathroom, snapping Marcus out of his daze. He quickly placed the phone back on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed, his hands trembling. His perfect life, the one he had worked so hard to build, was starting to crumble. Marcus didn't know what to do. Should he confront Jasmine, Nathan, or should he wait, gather more evidence, and confirm what he already knew deep down? The betrayal was like a knife in his chest, and the pain only grew sharper with each passing minute. That night, as Jasmine slept peacefully beside him, Marcus lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His mind raced with thoughts of revenge, of justice, of all the ways he could make Nathan pay for what he had done. The following morning, Marcus felt like a man living in someone else's life. He couldn't focus at work, his thoughts consumed by the text he had seen on Jasmine's phone. Every interaction with Nathan grated on his nerves, and he found himself analyzing every word, every smirk, every casual comment. He could feel his rage bubbling beneath the surface, but he forced himself to remain calm. He needed more proof before confronting either of them. At home, Jasmine seemed oblivious to the storm brewing inside Marcus. She hummed softly as she prepared dinner, her movements graceful and relaxed. It made him sick to his stomach. How could she act so normal, so composed, when she was betraying him? Marcus's hands tightened into fists as he watched her from the living room. Later that night, while Jasmine was asleep, Marcus made a decision. He couldn't sit idly by, stewing in his suspicions. He needed the truth. Quietly, he unlocked her phone using the passcode he had memorized months ago and began scrolling through her messages. What he found shattered whatever was left of his trust. The thread with Nathan was filled with flirtatious texts and photos, selfies of Jasmine in the same black dress she had worn the night of her supposed art show with Tamika. Messages from Nathan spoke of secret meetings, expensive dinners, and whispered promises of a future together. One text in particular made Marcus's blood run cold. "When can you leave him? I can give you everything he can't." Marcus stared at the screen, his heart pounding. He felt a rush of emotions, anger, betrayal, heartbreak, all crashing into him at once. The woman he loved, the woman he had trusted with his heart, had been lying to him all along. And Nathan, the man he admired, the man who had mentored him, had been playing him for a fool. He put the phone down and sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. The weight of the betrayal was suffocating. For the first time, Marcus felt completely powerless. His marriage, his career, his sense of self, all of it was unraveling before his eyes. The next day, Marcus couldn't bring himself to look at Jasmine. He left for work early, avoiding her usual goodbye kiss. At the office, he avoided Nathan as well, retreating to his desk and burying himself in paperwork. But no matter how hard he tried to focus, his thoughts kept drifting back to the texts, the photos, the lies. By lunchtime, Marcus had made up his mind. He wasn't going to let this slide. That evening, he would confront Jasmine and demand answers. He deserved the truth, no matter how painful it might be. When he arrived home, Jasmine was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled as he walked in. "Hey, babe, how was your day?" Marcus didn't respond. He set his briefcase down and stood in front of her, his arms crossed. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low and steady. Jasmine's smile faltered. "What's wrong?" Marcus didn't waste any time. "How long have you been seeing Nathan?" Her eyes widened in shock, and she froze, her phone slipping from her hands onto the couch. "What are you talking about?" she stammered. "Don't play dumb, Jasmine," Marcus said, his tone sharper now. "I saw the messages, the dinners, the photos, the promises. How long has it been going on?" Jasmine's face crumpled and she looked away, unable to meet his gaze. I don't know what to say." "Try the truth," Marcus snapped. "How long?" She hesitated, then whispered, 6 months. The admission hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. 6 months, half a year of lies, deceit, and betrayal. He felt his hands tremble with anger, but he forced himself to stay composed. "Why?" he asked, his voice softer now, tinged with pain. "Why would you do this to me? To us?" Jasmine wiped at her eyes, her voice shaking as she spoke. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was lonely, Marcus. You're always working, always focused on your job. I felt invisible." Marcus stared at her, his jaw tightening. "So, you turned to him? My boss? The man who's been mentoring me, supporting me?" "It wasn't like that," Jasmine said quickly. He made me feel special, like I mattered. I never wanted to hurt you, Marcus. I swear." "You didn't want to hurt me?" Marcus repeated, his voice rising. "Do you even hear yourself, Jasmine? You've been sneaking around with him behind my back, and you didn't want to hurt me." "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to fix this." Marcus shook his head, his heart breaking all over again. "You can't fix this," he said. "You've already destroyed everything." The room fell silent, the weight of their argument hanging heavy in the air. Jasmine looked at him, tears streaming down her face, but Marcus couldn't bring himself to feel sorry for her. All he felt was rage at her, at Nathan, at the entire situation. That night, Marcus lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His mind raced with thoughts of revenge, of justice, of making Nathan pay for what he had done, the man who had ruined his marriage, who had manipulated Jasmine, who had betrayed his trust. He couldn't let him get away with it. By morning, Marcus had made a decision. He wasn't going to sit back and let Nathan walk all over him. He was going to confront him, and this time, he wouldn't hold back. Marcus could barely hold himself together at work the next day. Every time he saw Nathan walking confidently through the office, his blood boiled. Nathan had no idea that Marcus knew the truth. He carried on as usual, making jokes in meetings, patting Marcus on the back as though they were still mentor and mentee. It was almost unbearable. By lunch, Marcus had had enough. He decided to confront Nathan directly. He walked into Nathan's office without knocking, his jaw clenched and his fists at his sides. Nathan looked up from his desk, surprised but amused. "Marcus, come on in. What's the rush?" Marcus slammed the door shut behind him, his eyes burning with fury. "We need to talk." Nathan leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. "Sure, what's on your mind?" "You know damn well what's on my mind," Marcus spat. "Jasmine." For the first time, Nathan's confident demeanor faltered. His smirk disappeared, replaced by a cautious expression. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," Marcus said, his voice rising. "I saw the messages, the photos. I know everything." Nathan sighed, leaning forward in his chair. "Marcus, listen. I don't think this is the time or place." "Don't patronize me," Marcus snapped, cutting him off. You betrayed me. You pretended to be my mentor, my friend, and all the while, you were sneaking around with my wife. Nathan stood, his hands raised in mock surrender. Look, I get that you're upset. Upset? Marcus barked, stepping closer to Nathan. You've been sleeping with my wife, and you think I'm just upset? Do you have any idea what you've done? Nathan's calm facade began to crack. All right, fine, he said, his tone defensive. Yes, I've been seeing Jasmine, but let's not pretend this is all on me. Maybe if you'd been paying more attention to her instead of your work, this wouldn't have happened. Marcus's fists clenched, and his vision blurred with rage. Don't you dare put this on me. Face it, Marcus, Nathan said, his voice cold. She came to me because you weren't enough for her. That's not my fault. The words were like a slap in the face. Marcus felt his chest tighten, his anger surging to a breaking point. Without thinking, he lunged at Nathan, shoving him against the wall. Papers and objects fell from Nathan's desk as the two men grappled, their shouts echoing through the office. Nathan fought back, shoving Marcus off of him and straightening his tie. You're out of control, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. No wonder she came to me. You're pathetic. Marcus froze, his breathing ragged. For a moment he considered walking away, letting the confrontation end there. But Nathan's smug expression, his condescending tone, pushed him over the edge. I'll show you pathetic, Marcus growled. In a blind fury, Marcus grabbed a heavy paperweight from Nathan's desk and swung it at him. The blow landed with a sickening thud, and Nathan staggered backward, clutching his head. Marcus didn't stop. His anger consumed him, driving him to strike again and again, until Nathan collapsed onto the floor. The room fell silent, save for Marcus's ragged breathing. He stared down at Nathan's lifeless body, his mind racing with the gravity of what he had just done. Blood pooled around Nathan's head, staining the pristine white carpet. The paperweight slipped from Marcus's hand, landing with a dull thud beside Nathan's body. For a moment, Marcus felt nothing. No fear, no regret, just an eerie sense of calm. But as the adrenaline began to fade, reality crashed down on him. He had killed a man. Not just any man, but his boss, his mentor, the man who had betrayed him in the worst possible way. Panic set in. Marcus frantically looked around the office, his mind racing. What was he going to do? He thought about trying to cover it up, but there was too much evidence. The blood, the shattered objects on the desk, the security cameras in the building. There was no escaping this. Marcus knew he had to leave. He grabbed his bag and stumbled out of the office, avoiding eye contact with his colleagues as he made his way to the parking lot. His hands trembled as he started his car, his mind a whirlwind of fear and regret. When Marcus arrived home, Jasmine was waiting for him. She took one look at his pale face and trembling hands and knew something was wrong. Marcus, what happened? She asked, her voice filled with concern. He couldn't look at her. It's over, he said quietly. Nathan's gone. Jasmine's eyes widened in shock. What do you mean, gone? I killed him, Marcus admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Jasmine staggered back, her hand covering her mouth. What? Marcus, no. I couldn't take it anymore, he said, tears streaming down his face. He betrayed me. You betrayed me. I lost everything because of him. Before Jasmine could respond, there was a loud knock at the door. Marcus's heart sank as he realized what was happening. The police had arrived. He opened the door, his hands raised in surrender. The officers cuffed him and led him away, ignoring Jasmine's pleas for an explanation. As Marcus sat in the back of the police car, staring out at the darkened streets, he felt a crushing weight settle over him. His life, once so perfect, had been destroyed in an instant. The stark gray walls of the interrogation room felt suffocating. Marcus sat at the metal table, his wrists cuffed, his face blank. Hours earlier, he had been a man consumed by rage and betrayal. Now, he was a man broken, overwhelmed by the consequences of his actions. Across from him sat two detectives, their gazes sharp and unyielding. "Mr. Daniels," one of them began, his tone firm but calm. "We need you to explain exactly what happened in Nathan Cross's office." Marcus remained silent, his mind replaying the events of the confrontation like a broken record. The look on Nathan's face, the sound of the paperweight striking his skull, the blood pooling on the pristine white carpet, it all haunted him. Finally, he exhaled deeply and spoke. "I didn't plan it," Marcus said, his voice low and trembling. "I went there to confront him about the affair. I wanted answers." "And then?" the second detective pressed. Marcus closed his eyes, the memory of Nathan's smug face flashing in his mind. "He didn't deny it. He said it was my fault, that I wasn't enough for Jasmine. I lost control." He opened his eyes, his gaze hollow. "I didn't mean to kill him, but he wouldn't stop talking, wouldn't stop taunting me." I snapped. The detectives exchanged a glance, their expressions unreadable. They continued questioning him, probing for details. But Marcus's answers remained consistent. He didn't try to justify his actions, nor did he attempt to shift the blame. He knew he was guilty. Meanwhile, back home, Jasmine sat on the couch, her hands shaking as she scrolled through the news on her phone. The headlines were everywhere. Prominent CEO Nathan Cross found dead in his office. Her heart pounded as she read the details, the weight of her guilt pressing down on her like a heavy blanket. She couldn't believe how quickly things had spiraled out of control. Her affair with Nathan had started as a distraction, a way to fill the emptiness she felt in her marriage, but she never intended for it to destroy everything. And now, Marcus, the man she had once promised to love forever, was facing murder charges because of her choices. Tears streamed down her face as she thought about the life they had built together. The cozy home, the shared dreams, the laughter they used to share. It was all gone now. She wanted to blame Nathan, to tell herself that he had manipulated her. But deep down, she knew she was just as responsible. When the police came to the house to collect evidence, Jasmine felt like a ghost in her own home. She answered their questions mechanically, her voice devoid of emotion. They confiscated Marcus's phone, his clothes from that night, and any other items that might connect him to the crime scene. Jasmine felt like she was watching it all happen from a distance, unable to process the reality of the situation. In court, the trial was swift. The evidence against Marcus was overwhelming. Security footage from the office, the blood-stained paperweight, and his own confession. The prosecution painted him as a man consumed by jealousy and rage, while the defense argued that he had acted in a moment of passion, driven by betrayal. Jasmine testified during the trial, her voice shaking as she recounted the events leading up to Nathan's death. She admitted to the affair, her guilt palpable as she described how it had strained her marriage and driven Marcus to the breaking point. Her testimony was both damning and heartbreaking, painting a picture of a man who had been deeply wronged but had chosen violence as his response. The jury deliberated for less than a day. Marcus was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read, the weight of the decision settling heavily over everyone present. Jasmine wept quietly, her tears a mixture of regret, sorrow, and a sense of finality. In prison, Marcus sat alone in his cell, staring at the small window that let in a sliver of sunlight. The once ambitious, confident man was now a shadow of himself. The walls around him were cold and unyielding, a constant reminder of the life he had lost. He thought about Jasmine often, wondering if she ever thought about him. He thought about their home, their plans for the future, and the man he had once been. But most of all, he thought about Nathan, about the betrayal that had set everything into motion, about the moment he had let his anger consume him. Every day was the same. He woke up, ate, worked, and slept, the monotony of prison life offering little distraction from his thoughts. But even in the bleakness of his existence, Marcus found moments of clarity. He knew he had made mistakes, mistakes that had cost him everything. And while he couldn't undo what he had done, he vowed to spend the rest of his life trying to make peace with himself. Life outside the prison walls was far from easy. The scandal had ruined her reputation, and she struggled to find a sense of normalcy. People whispered about her wherever she went, their judgment weighing heavily on her. She tried to move on, to rebuild her life, but the guilt was always there, a constant reminder of the choices that had led to such a tragic end. Sometimes she would sit in their empty house, staring at old photos of her and Marcus, wondering how things could have been different. If she had been honest with him, if she had ended things with Nathan sooner, maybe none of this would have happened. But there were no answers, no way to change the past. The story of Marcus, Jasmine, and Nathan became a cautionary tale, a story of ambition, betrayal, and the destructive power of unchecked emotions. Marcus would spend the next 2 decades paying for his actions, while Jasmine lived with the knowledge that her choices had set the tragedy in motion. In the end, there were no winners, only broken lives and shattered dreams.